Oh, look at this old.
Ooh.
You know, this is from like from the 19th. I bet you Nick Pope is probably in this one too.
Oh my God. Oh, I love it.
You also filmed Hard Evidence.
Well, that's not something we really expected to do.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Emmett and Joe. We're the UFO Bros, and we're here with executive producer Andrew Nock. And this is the man who put together Unidentified with Demi Lovato, which is streaming now on Peacock.
Right now.
We might happen to be in the premiere episode, so make sure you check that out.
Yep.
And we're going to go through some stories. We're going to ask Andrew like all kinds of great questions. And first of all, thank you for being with us. We're really excited.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm big fans.
Really? He's big fans.
Wow.
Wow. You and Dallas.
Well, I reached out to you guys to be on the show, remember?
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
We want to know, our story. How about you? Do people know how you got into paranormal and UFOs and, just this crazy paranormal world we're in? Like, how did you get into this?
So I grew up in the north of England, surrounded by just like Roman ruins and castles and stately haunted mansions. So I was always surrounded by this really weird kind of like history, medieval history, ancient history. And along with that is a lot of folklore. I grew up, the local legend where I lived was called the Lambton Worm. And it was a giant worm that used to wrap itself around this massive hill in where I grew up. And the hill's still there. And it looks like this kind of pyramid shaped hill. And there's a local legend about this knight had to like dress in like spiked armor and fight the Lambton Worm, and he would cut it into pieces and it would rejoin itself. So he had to like take it into the river, and then he could chop it into pieces, and then the river would flush away the different sections of the Lambton Worm, and it was defeated, and all the sheep were saved. So I grew up around these really weird kind of legends like that, and it just really spoke to me, this history, this mystery, and the folklore. And there was a TV show in particular that really got me interested called Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World. And it aired in like 1980, and Arthur C. Clarke, who was the author of 2001, hosted it. And he had crews go all over the world speaking to people who had firsthand accounts of Sasquatch, the Yeti, UFOs, raining frogs, crystal skulls, all the classics that people are still doing today on all the channels. He did it kind of first, I know like Leonard Nimoy did a version in the US as well, but that show kind of freaked me out and fascinated me as a kid. And I started getting books on ghost hunting as a kid and on UFOs. And it just kind of started from there. When I first came to Los Angeles, the first show I worked on was called Ancient Mysteries with Leonard Nimoy. And I was just starting out in the business, and that kind of started the whole kind of thing for me. And I started just working in the paranormal genre because, it's fun, it's fascinating, it's fun, and it's controversial. That's what I like about it.
I love it. What I love most about it is just the research into something that's so mysterious, like you're talking about. We started going out. We had a neighbor who had a haunted house, and we would go there, and she would play these tapes. By the way, I wish I could get them. They were pretty creepy. She would record a cassette tape every time she left her house.
Bertha.
Oh
my God, that was the creepiest shit. And you would hang around at her house.
I hung around her house all the time. And we were like, let's say a prayer. And she had the creepiest tapes. And so that also, I think,
she would put a tape in a cassette recorder, record it, leave the house, and then all kinds of weird stuff would happen. And all she had was one dog.
It was just her and her dog, and she'd take it for a walk, and she'd come back, and there was a rattling, and you can hear doors opening and closing, and
you'd run around the house trying to figure it out. Is it this? Is it this?
That's actually how we, really, that was like our first investigation into that.
Pretty much
paranormal.
She was like 90 years old.
You've worked on so many shows, and I want to talk about Unidentified with Demi Lovato, which is why we're here.
Yes.
I think, honestly, the biggest UFO show ever. And I mean, ever. I have never seen a show with so much press, so much promotion, such a huge name behind it. Will you tell us a little bit about what inspired you to take this direction with the show? Because it's young, it's fun, it's fresh, it's a little brighter than the normal take on paranormal and UFO stuff. What do you think?
Well, Good Story Entertainment, that's JD Roth and Adam Greeno, reached out to me because of my experience in the genre and said, look, we can't make this like other UFO shows. And those shows are great. And I love those types of shows. Demi believes that they have had conscious contact with some sort of entities that are out there. Demi's seen UFOs on at least 3 occasions. And when Demi was with the crew and myself, we definitely had some encounters that you'll see in the show that we'll get to in a second. And it was a chance to really get this subject out to a bigger audience. As you said, a younger audience, a female audience, if you will, a gay audience, people of color. It was just like, it was such a great opportunity. When I started, Demi had 108 followers on Instagram. It's 115 now, which is insane, right?
Million, by the way.
115 million followers. And so that's just a huge amount of people who are going to get exposed to this subject who may not ever think about the subject. And the perfect example is their best friend, Matthew Scott. He was like, why do I even need to know about this stuff? I mean, that was his kind of attitude at the beginning. He has other things going on, like everybody does. And he became interested, and he became kind of the surrogate for the audience. If I can get Matthew engaged, I figured everyone in social media and TV land will have an interest in this too. He's kind of like the gateway to Demi, because Demi's a full-on believer and Matthew's kind of like, I don't know, but he loves Demi. And you can see that in their relationship.
You're having kind of thing,
Yeah, you can see that in their relationship, and you can see that he wants to experience what Demi's experienced. And I think Demi doesn't have all the answers, and Demi doesn't really know what's going on. Demi has their own ideas and has consulted with many UFO experts. I think people in the field will be surprised at how many people Demi has interactions with. I mean, like dinners with Jacques Vallée, and was at a UFO conference recently. They didn't tweet about it, so I won't say which one it is, but Demi does do a lot of the groundwork and is in a position where doors open for Demi. So that was another thing that I liked. If Demi's involved in a project, it may be easier to get into places and get access to places because people are more willing to have them shine a spotlight on their work as researchers or as eyewitnesses or locations. And as I said to Good Story, for me, it was kind of like when the Beatles went to go visit the Maharishi Yogi in India. They were done with the partying. They were looking for a higher meaning in life. And that's exactly what Demi is doing. And that's where Demi is at right now. We've all seen the YouTube documentary, in the dark times that Demi's went through, and they've come out on the other side. And this has really given them a new spiritual aspect to life. And I just thought it was a great opportunity to bring in a more spiritual aspect to this field. I know not everyone agrees with that, but I think it's a different angle to look at the phenomena and to get people talking about it.
Exactly. I think it's great that it's now reaching a younger crowd of viewers and people that maybe be interested into UFOs and aliens, and that that they already released that disclosure out already about it. I think it's good because it's a lot of older people, older generation that's still into this stuff, but it's good to bring this whole new crowd in. They can get excited about it. And, I think it's just great that it's finally been reaching younger crowds.
Yeah. I would just want to kind of, jump in on that. It's been the old guard for a very long time, so to speak. And they've been very careful at fashioning this sort of narrative, how they want the UFO world to appear, or how they want these shows, how these shows should appear. But the thing is, we've had UFOs on every nightly news show. There's been every news organization has made a special about UFOs. And while I love all the people involved, the speaking heads of ufology, I love them, but they're not sitting on Kelly Clarkson this morning talking about UFOs.
Yeah.
To hear Kelly Clarkson and Seth Meyers, and I mean, I'm talking these people that are the most relatable people, it was just wild to see Demi sitting there talking about it when I don't think Kelly Clarkson, as an example, that doesn't become part of her normal day, I would imagine. And I would imagine so for everybody else, because we're in our phones, we're in our, when, you know, we got to get to soccer practice, it's tea time, you know.
I feel like, you know, there's been a lot of UFO shows on TV, as you know.
Yeah.
I've done some of them. And to me, this was an opportunity just to do a different style of show. You know, we could have driven to Area 51 and stood at the gate. We could have talked about government cover-ups, and it just felt like, let's do something more of a spiritual consciousness angle that people aren't really talking about. And I know some people might say, well, that feels kind of woo-woo or magical, but if there are higher beings out there, then it makes sense that they are on a different level of intelligence or consciousness than us, you know. So it didn't seem out there to me. It seemed like, it just felt like a different way of doing it, you know. And especially if you relate that to things like in ancient cultures, they all saw these extraterrestrial beings as spirits from the sky that came down.
Exactly.
You know, the star people, sky people, you know, they all have tales of people coming down on, like, you know, mini pyramids called the Ben stone, and it's all documented on the walls of, like, you know, Temple of, you know, Seti and things like that. And, you know, I just feel like, you know, the younger generation are more open-minded to something like that and more interested in the subject, and not just talk about government cover-ups again.
Yeah.
Because I think that doesn't resonate to a younger generation. They want to take back the narrative.
I love that. I just wanted to say too, really in the UFO world, it's a full spectrum, everything from the nuts and bolts aspect to the, you know, the flying machines and, you know, people measuring pixels about the tic tac, and, you know, they go down that rabbit hole. But there's so much more that, frankly, in some shows they don't really like to get into. And it was so great. Like, whatever people feel about, there's something in this show that everybody can have a pathway into the topic. And so it's all encompassing. But so we have sort of the, you know, like you're talking about, I would say, you know, the higher extraterrestrial sort of being perspective, being connected spiritually, but you also filmed hard evidence.
Well, that's not something we really expected to do. You know, this is something that, as a producer, that you hope for and you're kind of panicking about, because, you know, it's like there's no guarantee of capturing anything when you go out. You know, I went out with Ben Hansen for like 8 episodes doing UFO Witness, and we weren't able to capture anything. On this series, we were lucky enough to capture, I think, like 3 instances of something traveling through the sky that moved erratically. So it's not a plane, certainly not a satellite. If it's something else, you know, I'm happy to hear about what it could be. But in the moment, it was pretty amazing. I think people can, you know, you were there for the first one, the very first day we were filming, which was amazing.
Yeah. Would you say that would be like a life-changing experience, or was there any time doing any of these UFO shows that was life-changing at all?
For me?
Yeah.
You know, I've been doing this for a long time, and I always come from a skeptical point of view. And I have to say, when we went to Sedona and we did the Sky Watch there with the mass meditation session, where tens of thousands of Demi's followers were meditating at the same time. We had that neon pyramid on top of the mountain.
Beautiful, by the way.
Awesome.
Thank you. Yes. And Elizabeth April was there, and she was fantastic. We all saw stuff in the sky. Now, when you see the show, it's not easy to see some of it, because you can, it's a lot easier to take still photography or time lapses of night sky, even something as brilliant and bright as Sedona. Shooting in video, it's not quite, it doesn't come through quite as much. But I can tell you, we all saw stuff. The Grips saw stuff, the grumpy sound guy saw stuff. You know, it wasn't just Demi and her friends in the pyramid cross-legged. Everyone was like, what the F is that? Including myself. There was things moving in the sky. And, you know, you think, well, I should have whipped my phone out. And now I understand why people don't always do that when they encounter something, because it's kind of overwhelming.
Everybody's got a video camera. I'm just waiting for images of people visiting, having tea with aliens on the spacecraft.
And so I would say I definitely saw a UFO that night. And we had this discussion about should we enhance the nighttime footage for the show, and we made a decision. It's not do anything like that. Let's not enhance the footage. Let's not doctor the footage. Let's not make it look better than it is. It's just present it the way we captured it and let people decide for themselves, because that's not what the show was about. We weren't trying to present anything that was fake or phony at all. We just tried to capture whatever we could and present it. And I think we were very lucky with some of it.
Just like Dallas had her first experience out there with us. That was her very first, and she felt something and she started crying, and she was very emotional, and it does happen.
I know that
it does happen. And maybe it's because people did have the intention of trying to make contact. I don't know. Rather than just pointing up, a camera at the sky and just saying, "Oh, nothing's there." You consciously try and make that contact. I mean, I don't know if that's true, but it seemed to happen most times when Demi made that attempt.
Demi
seems like
about that.
Like a magnet.
Magnet,
right?
Exactly.
A magnet, right?
Quite literally, like you said, you've went out with quite a few other people, and I'm sure there's intention to see and film something, but we were surprised in the premiere, we're in the premiere episode for everybody who is watching, how amazing that moment was, where we were all in it. And in that moment, thank God we had cameras, because you don't think about, let me grab my phone and take my eyes off this absolutely miraculous moment.
Right.
That's something.
But sometimes you cannot capture it. You can't capture it on film. It's just like you said, you can see it with your eye, but when you put it on film, no matter what kind of camera lens you have, you still can't capture it. Which is
but we did. We managed to get it that night with you guys.
You did get it that night.
And because it was a chaotic night, it was a chaotic scene, it was the first day of filming. And when you guys all huddled around that iPad screen and watched that thing kind of moving down, it was just like, wow, no one expected that to happen at all. But it was fascinating. I
mean, it actually happened within minutes of looking, which is
surprising.
And I try to explain to people, this is not something, this is, we're talking possibly out of the atmosphere, most likely. It's so far away, we had to use specialized cameras to look at it. And but with this one, you could see it with the naked eye as well. And it was responding to the lasers that we were using. It was really an incredible moment. I know that we had a blast meeting them. It was so much fun.
And you too.
We had a lot of laughs. Demi's got a great, wonderful belly laugh. I love it.
They do. They really do. And it's that's one of the things I loved about having Dallas and Matthew on the show, is that it really brought out just Demi being Demi, like not being the megastar. And if you want to know what it's like to hang out with Demi and just shoot the shit, this is like a great insight for any fan. It's like you just just hanging out, and just Matthew like introducing you guys, what the UFO bro is going to show us hoes. I mean, you're not going to hear Nick Pope say that on a show, right?
Hell no, you're not.
So
let's see what the UFO bros got to show us, hoes.
Coming in hot with the probe.
And we love Nick because Nick was in the show as well.
Coming in hot.
Yeah, I mean, we just wanted to show off their personality and what it was like to be on the road with them. It was kind of like a Coachella road trip with the hopes of seeing UFOs. I mean, that was kind of like the vibe of the show. Yeah, and I'm glad we went to Sedona. In this Sedona episode, to prepare Demi, Matthew, and Dallas mentally for this attempted contact, Demi undergoes remote viewing training, which, back in the 70s, it started in this CIA program called Project Stargate, where there were some people, like Ingo Swann was a guy who was trying to train regular soldiers how to have psychic powers. And it wasn't just psychics doing mind warfare against the Soviets, like Uri Geller, for example, who was involved in it as well. I don't know if you remember who Uri Geller was.
Of course.
And I
He's
did
the spoon bender.
The spoon bender. He was a big deal when I was a kid back in England. But we put Demi in this remote viewing workshop, and we did 2 tests. And the one you see in the show was actually not the best result. We did another one, and Demi's results were even better. And it was so good, no one believed it. So we kind of took it out of the show, because it was kind of like, well, no one's going to believe Demi was able to do this closely. And it really was mind-blowing. I mean, no one could believe it. So we did 2 sessions. The one we kept in the show was the one that wasn't quite as accurate, but it just seemed more, I don't know. I just, we didn't want to, I don't know, but we just thought it was kind of like, if we put the other one in, no one's going to believe. They're going to think we staged the whole thing, and it's just not true. Demi does seem to have some psychic ability.
I completely agree. We were talking to Dallas and explaining that there's, just jumping back to kind of, I think why you were, seeing so many things like Joe and I think being there, everybody there, looking for something to happen, number one.
Same conscious.
But Demi
has a lot of great consciousness, a lot of great spiritual coming at Demi, and then everything just wants to follow Demi. It's just following all the way down, no matter where Demi's at. It's just beaming on Demi. So anybody who's around Demi, everybody's experiencing it.
And all over the world.
Do you think that being such a performer, such a fascinating kind of personality, do you think if ETs exist, do you think they would look to make contact with those types of people? The people who are influences in society, the people who are kind of recognized. I mean, it makes sense to me. If you're a hyper intelligent life force and you come here, who are you going to reach out to? It's probably the movers and the shakers and the people who have that kind of influence. Because I was looking at it today, there's a long history of pop singers, for example, who've made contact with UFOs. There's a photograph that I just found recently of John Lennon in 1965 with a UFO detector that someone built for him. And he was fascinated in UFOs, and he'd had his own sighting in New York in August 1974. And he called the police. The police came and they said, yeah, a lot of people saw a UFO tonight. And the local news came, and there's footage you'll find on YouTube of him talking to the local news on his rooftop of where the UFO moved past the UN building and down here. And then he did drawings of it. I mean, he was fascinated by this thing. Elvis Presley had UFO sightings, Jimi Hendrix, Lemmy from Motorhead, Keith Richards. I mean, I was saying, I wonder if, these extraterrestrials want to make themselves known to certain people who maybe they recognize as creatives or artists or have something special about them. I don't know, it's not just that these famous people are looking for this themselves or happen to see it. Maybe, you need to open yourself up to these sightings yourself.
I fully believe there's something to that. I believe that a lot of these people who do believe, or they're in a place to witness something, there's so much, I use the word energy, and I understand that that's sort of an esoteric term, but I think there might be something that if there are extraterrestrials, they can see the amount of, I don't want to use, the word fame we can use, but the attention that individual brings in terms of consciousness. Right. Single unified consciousness from people all around the world. If I was able to detect that as an extraterrestrial race, I would probably go to those people that have a good handle on like Demi and 100 and plus million people. That's somebody you might want to share something with.
Maybe, yeah, it kind of makes sense.
It does. It makes sense.
In a crazy way.
I'd like to come full circle and talk about the younger generation and why they should become involved in this, why they should care. And after that, how can they get involved more? What do you think? I mean,
I think, I think Demi kind of describes it well. If there's something out there, they believe that these extraterrestrials are non-hostile. In fact, they could probably help us somehow. A lot of people are, dismayed at what's going on in the world with the environments and, divisions. I mean, maybe there's something to it that if there is a higher being out there that's around us, maybe they're already here. Maybe they're not traveling light years to come meet us, right? I mean, it doesn't make sense that they would be traveling 249 million light years to come visit us just to take a look. It makes more sense that they're actually here and have always been here, maybe. And maybe they are just waiting for us to reach out in a positive way. And maybe they do have an interest in this planet. I mean, if they were going to destroy us, they probably would have already done it by now, right?
Yep, that's what we said with Dallas.
So I think a younger generation can kind of get their head around that. I think they can understand that, and they don't see the fear that we've been told for so long by the government. that's not real, but you should also be terrified of these things. And we know that there's been instances where the government's got involved with making movies in Hollywood.
Right.
You know,
That's always the narrative, though. Scary. All the
Right.
alien movies that are coming out now are still, we're fighting the aliens. We got to destroy them. They're coming to take over the planet.
Nobody's had a really good depiction on like Skinny Bob, like a really good Skinny Bob movie. They had Hi, I'm Paul.
I love Paul.
Paul's
Paul
cool,
is
but I
cool.
want
I love
something
it.
that's like they never come out with a proper alien. Like Signs was kind of close,
But they
what about E.T.?
that's way off base.
Oh,
I love
these little flipper legs. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. They got that from somewhere.
I think what Joe's saying is like, you've seen the Skinny Bob clip.
Yeah, it's really interesting. That little outfit he's got on is pretty cool.
How do you think he gets that turtleneck over that big ass head?
Exactly, right? It's memory. It's some sort of memory metal that they use, and it's like
shit.
sucks back onto his neck.
Bro,
You have to get your alien bro to help. And then you have it on. But then I don't know if you can take it off. Anyway, so again, this is Andrew Nock, executive producer from Unidentified with Demi Lovato, the absolute best UFO show, now streaming on Peacock. Go watch it. Tweet us at Real UFO Bros.
MVP.
Yes. And we'll get back to you. Tell us what it's like. If you love it. If you
like
had a
it.
good time. If you're going to get your friends together and
Follow
go
us
out.
on everything.
Thanks, Andrew, so much, man. We enjoyed
Thank you
it.
guys so much for your time. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank
All right,
you.
bye.
Have a good
See you
day.
later. Bye. Joe, you weren't talking that much.
I do, yeah, he just doesn't shut up. And I try to, it's by the time I get my quote in or what I want to say, it's already
So
too late.
anyway, we're going to move forward.
Can you
on-
say aluminum?
Aluminium.
Fuck.
I don't understand this.
I don't know.